responsibility, as we heard today in our khutbah, is being engaged, being aware, and being cognizant of the facts. And there's no better opportunity than this, where you have candidates running for Congress from this district to be here with us to listen, listen to their views, their ideas, what they propose to do, and also for them to have the chance to know what you think and ask through your questions, be able to know what matters to this community. And I just ask you to be respectful. If there's anything you don't like, we are all here to listen to ideas. And in the end, that's the beauty of the country we live in. We all make our thoughts known through our votes. And that's why we encourage everyone to be registered to vote. We encourage everyone to, on your primary, to come and do your civic duty to vote. And then at the election time, to be there and vote. So with that, I'll give it to Brother Mahbub, who's been organizing and getting this event going. And thank you, Brother Mahbub, for the time you do. Another board member of the Orange County Islamic Foundation. We will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you. And I wish all of you a Muslim Islamic greeting. Assalamu alaikum. May God's peace be with you. Recite we start with the recitation from the Holy Book.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So I'll recite the Arabic first, and then I'll recite briefly English afterwards, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen. In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful. All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful, sovereign of the day of judgment. It is you we worship, and you we ask for help alone. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those upon whom you have bestowed favor, not of those who have invoked your anger or of those who are astray. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Here. While Mr. Malas welcomed all of you, I just simply want to add that we thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. My name is Mehboob Akhtar. I am a volunteer at this masjid at Orange County Islamic Foundation, as well as a board member. I also wanted to welcome all the candidates. I think right from the start, it would be good to recognize and introduce all of them, at least briefly. Immediately right is Mr. Nick Torres. Sure, of course, yeah. As you entered this hall, you might have picked up a brochure that we prepared for today. The brochure has the names and their affiliation, as well as their website, so that when you go home, or your office, wherever, and when you want to learn a little bit more, so you can look up their website. But we did that. Next to Mr. Torres is Colonel Greg Ratz. Colonel Ratz served in the Marines or the Air Force, in the Marines. And after retirement, he's been serving the city of Mission Viejo. He's been a council member for quite a few terms. He was also mayor about 3 years ago. Yeah. And I would be remiss if I don't recognize that Colonel Ratz is accompanied by his lovely wife, Mrs. Lucy Ratz, right here. Next to Colonel Ratz is Dr. Dr. Asif is a pulmonologist. He is also an internist at Huntington Hospital, and now he's looking towards developing a new career. I believe we have another candidate who asked to be recognized. No, yeah, so I must mention that in District 40, which I will define to you in a few minutes, the representative Young Kim, she happens to be in Washington, and I heard from her office twice. We had offered that if at this time, it's after 5 o'clock, and that if she has the time, she could be on Zoom with us, but either they weren't able to arrange or they said it just wouldn't be possible. So not everything is 8 to 5 in Washington, I believe, right? So she was invited for sure. Is Mr. Pijada here? Okay. That to be recognized. He's running for U.S. Senate. I also want to welcome and appreciate the Mission Viejo Police Department as well as the Orange County Sheriff's Department for their presence. For their presence amongst us so that we all feel safe and secure. There's a little bit of housekeeping and ground rules for the forum. As you entered from this door, the restrooms are, as you go out the door, they're on the left side. There's a women's restroom as well as a men's restroom. In terms of entrance and exit, there is a front entrance where you came from, and there is also a back entrance, which is normally locked, but except when there are people here, except during prayer times. We would really, as I just said, we would really ask you to avail this opportunity to get to know the candidates. You see, this district is new. This district is new for the candidates. The current representative is not going to be our representative in the future, not because of just elections, but the district has changed. So I'm going to talk to you about all that stuff. So this is really your opportunity, and that is the objective today, to have you meet the candidates one-on-one, right? So after this, if they have the time, you can go and we will have a question and answer session. We also have some basic rules just so that the forum goes really well, okay? And that you really get the maximum benefit out of this. So as you all know, this is a house of worship, and just by its very nature, it calls for civility, respect, and kindness towards each other. This is a weapons-free zone. It's also a private property. No weapons of any kind are allowed. If you are carrying one, we respectfully request you to take it out of the premises. Treat everyone in the room with respect, even if you disagree with their viewpoint or ideas or positions. Hold yourself and each other accountable. I request you to stay on the topic. Address the issue, not the speaker. Please refrain from speeches. Be succinct in your questions. Let everyone participate. We don't plan inter-candidate interaction. This is really not a candidate debate. We want to maximize your interaction with the candidates. So with all that, your cooperation will be highly appreciated. So if you notice in the program, we had said, what is a candidate forum? Why a candidate forum? OCIF feels that it is our civic responsibility to participate in the democratic process and bring value to the process. And one way to accomplish this is to invite the candidates to come and meet their constituents. You get to know about them. They get to know you. Another way of participating in the civic process is to facilitate the voting process. So this facility will be a voting station. And hopefully when we apply, we'll be approved for the national elections as well. US Census and Redistricting. I feel that this is important to talk about because something has changed, which many of you are aware of, and it changes every 10 years. So the US Constitution empowers the Congress to carry out the census so that the people are empowered over their government. This was enshrined in the Constitution by the founders, Presidents Madison, Jefferson, and others. So it goes back to the founding of the nation. And was to count every person living in the newly created United States at the time, and to use that count to determine representation in the Congress. The first census took place in 1790 and has been carried out every decade since then. The last census was carried out in 2020. I'm sure many of you participated in that. As a result of that census, new districts were drawn for the US Congress, for State Assembly, and for the Senate. How many of you know that California actually lost one seat in Congress? Yeah, you would know, of course. So by the way, the census data is public and is available on census.gov website. The census is really a very important process because it brings equity to every state, every county, every city, and in reality, all Americans in terms of apportionment of resources, schools, hospitals, park. That's what it really does, right? Based on where the population is. The redistricting in itself is a process undertaken by state legislatures or by appointed commissions. In California, it's an appointed commission that does that. The current US district is District 45. So Mission Viejo and the neighboring areas were in District 45. Our representative was or is? Is. So up until the new representative, our representative is Katie Porter. Her district has been completely defined, so she's more towards the ocean. The new district in which this area is now District 40. It will include Lake Forest, Aliso Viejo, Laguna Woods, and Mission Viejo, and other cities. On the front of your brochure is a map that shows this district, as well as the areas and cities that are in that district. Election process and candidate eligibility. So I'm going to be very brief on that because we want to get to the main event. Basically, there will be primary elections on June 7th. There will be 4 candidates in the primary elections from District 40. 3 of you have graced us with their presence today. The 4th one is the current representative, Representative Young Kim, whose old district was 42, I believe. 39. Oh, 39. Apologize. 39. But she is now going to be in District 40. The voters approve a process where the 2 top vote getters in the primary will advance on to the national elections. Okay. Let's get to the business now. Let me invite Dr. Asif Mahmood for an opening statement. You have 2 minutes, Dr. Mahmood.
Want to just sit down in here?
You can sit down.
Just sit in front of
Your mic is right there.
Yeah.
But the mic is active.
That way we're not.
It's hot.
I'll stand up and make a statement. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Almighty Allah, with merciful and gracious. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for the organizer for this forum. And I do want to thank and welcome Mr. Rath and Mr. Torres in the mosque. Some of you know me and some of you don't know me. My name is Dr. Asif Mahmood. I'm a practicing physician. I was born and raised in a rural, small village in very humble background in Pakistan. And I was the first kid in my family to go to medical school. And finally, I called America home. There's no better place on earth than America. And nobody is treated better than Americans treat people who call America home. And you can see the land of opportunity in the dreamland. Person like me is running for Congress and is the main nominee for a main Democratic Party. When I was growing up, my parents taught me one principle, and that was helping others is our highest calling. I have practiced medicine in California for 23 years. And in my practice in 23 years, I have never charged one patient who did not have an insurance because I believe healthcare is a right, not a privilege. I want to take healthcare to a different level. I believe in affordable, quality healthcare. I want to make sure where we are today is not even close to where we need to be. I want to make sure hearing, dental, vision is essential part of the healthcare. I want to make sure every child is covered and preventive care is covered. I want to make sure the mental health is the essential part of healthcare. My goal from day one will be overhaul and improve healthcare. I also am concerned about safety and security of our people and security of our communities. I really applaud and adore the work our law enforcement does. And I would do everything possible to make our communities safe and bring everything from federal level to our law enforcement to help them facilitate their work better and bigger way. I'm a student of science. I'm a student of science, and I believe climate change is real. We are feeling climate change effects in California more than anywhere else. And I want to make sure we leave this state or this earth for a better place for our children and their children. I believe in inclusiveness. I believe in collectiveness. I believe there is more in common among us than which differentiate us. I want to make sure I work on both sides of aisle to bring everybody together to make decisions which are good for the people of District 40, for people of California, and generally for people of the United States. I would go and do everything possible to bring from other people from other side to make decisions which we are sent from our district. I will be your voice. You will be my eyes and my ears and my brain. Whatever I promise you over here, that's what I will do in U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. I humbly ask for your support. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Doctor. Good to have you here. And Nick, there are 3 Republicans running in this race. I'm one of them, Nick's the other, Young Kim, and the one Democrat. My name is Greg Raths. I'm a retired Marine Corps colonel. I spent 30 years on active duty and 3 combat operations. The most notable was Desert Storm over in Kuwait. When I went into battle, like Doctor is saying, I just didn't take my Republican Marines with me. I took all my Marines, and we won. We won as a team, and we won as Americans. And that's what I'll do when I go to Washington. I want to represent everybody. I've been a member of this community for 40 years. I came to El Toro. I came to the El Toro Air Base when it was open. Some of you may remember. I was flying the F-4 Phantom. Then I went to fly the F-18 Hornet. I flew mostly off of U.S. aircraft carriers, the Midway, the Coral Sea, the Ranger, the Constellation, and Abraham Lincoln. I've served 8 years on Mission Viejo City Council. I was mayor in 2018. And of those 8 years, we've had a balanced budget or a budget surplus. And that's what we need to get a handle in Washington. The Washington politicians love to spend money they don't have. I'm going to ask to be put on the budget committee. And once and for all, I'm only one of 435 congressmen if I make it there. But I'm going to do everything in my power to get the budget under control. And my number 2 priority is to ensure that America remains energy independent. If we maintain our own oil and gas and nuclear power, we don't have to count on other countries around the world, and it will lower the price of everything. And number three, I know. And number three is to get the border under control. So, Nick, it's up to you.
First, I'd like to thank the Orange County Islamic Federation and many of you here today, Dr. Mahbub, for having me come to this forum. I've actually been denied a forum to speak at many events by many local Republican groups and even churches. So I'd like to thank you guys for supporting our right to free speech and our duty for civic dialogue. So with that being said, I'll get into what I believe. My name is Nick Torres. I am an American nationalist, and perhaps some of my views might be at odds with some of the people in this room, and that's fine. And you can ask me questions on that. But where I think there is some unique overlap with the America First agenda and everyone in this room is in three key areas, okay? The first, I want to talk about foreign policy, okay? Our disastrous foreign policy over the last 20 years has totally destabilized the Middle East. We cannot continue going down the path and doing the bidding of foreign nations who do not have the interests of our own citizens at heart, nor the citizens of whom we're going to war with. So that's what separates me. First, America first. Keep our troops at home, keep our cities safe, keep our country safe. Let's focus on our border rather than going and destabilizing nations over in the Middle East. Number two, civil liberties. The imposition on our civil liberties following COVID has been totally draconian. You know, many people couldn't meet in their houses of worship. You know, I myself am no longer allowed to attend graduate school because of my refusal to take the COVID vaccine. So we've all experienced this kind of imposition on our civil liberties, but especially you with the people in the Muslim community, I think you can agree here too. You've experienced this for quite some time with, you know, groups like the FBI sending in informants into your mosques and things of that nature. I've actually experienced that firsthand in the activist movement as a patriot. So perhaps the target was different then. We're the targets now. You were the targets then, but there is some overlap there. We need to protect our civil liberties. And the third thing I'd like to say is social conservatism or social issues. What I really respect about the Islamic community is their firmness on the protection of family and what is right and not what is wrong. And I think, you know, with all due respect to Dr. Mahmoud, but the Democrat Party is an engine of LGBT values in this country, probably the foremost engine. And all due respect to candidate Ras too, but I wouldn't trust his ability to combat the LGBT lobby in this nation when he has people on his campaign who are in violation of traditional marriage. So, you know, I'm here to speak the truth. I'm here to be honest. I'm here to be an open book. If you care about social issues, if you care about a more reserved foreign policy, and if you care about protecting our civil liberties, vote Nick Torres, June 7th. Thank you.
I wanted to get started with something that you hijacked. I was going to say that to get the thing started, if you would, let's say, reiterate, what are your top three issues? Top three. You know, you have a full agenda, but top three. Since you just spoke, let's start with Dr. Mahmoud. Yeah. And briefly, please.
Briefly. Okay. So, is it working? Okay. So, my first and foremost will be healthcare, which I care dearly and mostly, and that's what I have done all my life. And I reiterated all the issues, and that is just little glimpse. There's a lot more to overhaul healthcare. Number two would be my foreign policy. Our foreign policy is not where it should be. And some things my opponents and I might agree, and some things we might not. But if it is not in national interest of America, we should limit our intervention and sending our troops in a harm's way. And third is doing everything possible to control this inflation and control the price. I feel for many communities in this district, and majority of communities in the district, who are living in fixed income and the prices are going up, and people who are presently sitting there, whether it is our incumbent congresswoman or somebody else, we need to do everything possible in every different ways without blaming anybody, every different ways. We need to make things affordable. Affordability is very, very important.
Thank you, Doctor. When our country was established and our forefathers wrote the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, the federal government is supposed to be this small entity, and the states and the locals would have the power. The federal government is supposed to have three things they're supposed to do. Number one is national security. Take care of our borders, make sure that our country is safe. And that's, I believe the country is failing. Our leaders are in Washington, if you want to call them leaders, our representatives in Washington are failing. Number two is maintain a common currency. When the colonies were together, North Carolina had their own dollar, New York had their dollar, and when we became a nation, the currency was one American dollar. And what the problem is, there's another problem with our leaders in Washington, or our congressmen and women in Washington that continue to print money, which lowers the value of the dollar, and we don't want that. The American dollar is the international currency, and it should be a strong dollar, and instead of this crazy inflated dollar that we just went through the last 2.5 years. And number three, the federal government is to ensure interstate commerce is run smoothly. That's the only thing the government was supposed to do at the federal level. Then the states would have the power, the counties, and then the local cities. So number one for me would be national security. Number two is to get inflation under control by ensuring that our country maintains energy independence until some type of follow-on technology to fuel our cars and airplanes is available. Right now it's not. So why are we buying oil from countries that we don't really get along with? And number three is obviously to ensure that this country's economy continues to be strong and work together and ensure that the immigration process is legal immigration. And I know you have a different slant on this, Nick, but legal immigration, because what happened during the pandemic, we stopped legal immigration, and 2.3 million people that would have immigrated legally, and these people go right into the workforce and really help the community. They're educated, and we have no problem with legal immigration, but that stopped. That's why I have a shortage. And also we have a shortage because the baby boomers, those that are between 67 and about 75 who had part-time jobs during COVID, they left the workforce and they're not coming back. So I would ensure that our legal immigration is done correctly. So those are my three priorities.
Well, yes, my three biggest priorities, I know I mentioned where we may have some overlap and we may have some difference, and I encourage you to ask me questions during the Q&A. The first is immigration, mass migration. I do have a totally different view from Greg and Dr. Mahmood. I'm for a total and complete immigration moratorium, no further immigration into the United States. And that is due to a variety of reasons. One, it's due to economic, as more migrants come into the country, whether it's legal or illegal, it depresses American workers' wages. It also comes to security. It's an unfortunate fact of the matter, but many of the 9/11 hijackers came here legally. Wouldn't have mattered if they came here illegally or legally or not. They still were able to come here. So we have a serious problem with our immigration system. I believe it needs to be totally overhauled. I believe we need to deport the illegal aliens that are currently in this country. And I think we need to do something that set up an immigration system which is worthy of the American people, because many of you, I'm sure, took a lot of time and effort to come here legally. And I don't think you appreciate the process of just seeing our borders being overrun and people being able to come here on a wish and a whim. Am I right? So the second thing I'm also opposed to, critical race theory. Again, maybe you disagree and I feel free to ask you questions, but I believe critical race theory to be nothing more than anti-white racism, and I believe it spreads anti-American hatred. That's my stance. If you'd like to ask some questions, feel free to go ahead and ask. That's why I'm here at the Q&A. The third thing, I would say vaccines, but I believe that's going more into the background. So I'm going to talk about foreign policy because Dr. Mahmoud brought it up, and I want to say I emphatically agree with him. That's something where perhaps we have a disagreement on a lot of issues, but I'm in total agreement that we need to stop sending our soldiers overseas to fight wars at the behest of other countries, because that's what we're doing. We're not fighting wars for America. We're not fighting wars to keep your neighborhood safe. We're fighting wars at the behest of powerful foreign lobbies who put a lot of money in our politics, and many of it, quite frankly, into both the Democrat and Republican parties. Well, that's not me. I'm here to speak for the American citizens. I'm not beholden to any lobbies, and I will make sure that if I get to Congress, I will do all I can to make sure that our troops are not fighting in Kiev, they're not fighting in Kabul, and they're staying home, raising families, and making sure that our country is safe here. Thank you.
I have a bunch of questions that were submitted, but since you're here, let's start with you. First question, go ahead, please.
What is that? No, I believe in legal immigration. My great grandparents came here from Germany, and we're a land of immigrants. And obviously, the original, a lot of original immigrants were from Europe, but we're continuing to assimilate from Central, South America, Asia, and the world. And that's what makes America such a great country. So I don't believe in white nationalism or anything like that. I just believe in the way we're doing it, legal immigration and getting along as Christians and Jews and Muslims and everything else. There's an effort on both sides of the aisle, the far fringes of both, with their own the obviously the progressives. They're very progressive in their views as far as what they're pushing, LGBT and the far fringe parts of society, and the far right that is pushing white nationalism, and we return or our country to only be run by whites and support whites. So I don't agree with either of the fringe. I'm more in the middle. I believe in the way I grew up with all my friends. I grew up in Arizona with Hispanics and had a great relationship with them. And I believe the country, if it has good leaders in Washington, that will continue to do this. And I believe in also at the local level. Mission Viejo, we run an amazing city here, and we're about 40 or about 60% white, about 14% Hispanic, 12% Asian, and you don't see any problems in our city. And one thing I really I'm going to drift just a little bit. You look around our streets, you don't see homeless, do you? It's a local issue. Homelessness is a local issue. It's not a national issue. It's not a state issue. It's not a county issue. It's a local issue. We have 4 houses in Mission Viejo run by a nonprofit, Mercy. It's called Mercy House. And if we have a homeless, we have a police officer from our city that drives around and looks for homeless and takes them to Mercy House and get them cleaned up. If it's a mental issue, we have a mental hospital here in Mission Viejo. A lot of people don't know. If it's a veterans issue, we take them to the Tyranny Center in Tustin. And if it's a drug issue, we have drug rehab facilities. So I call on the mayor of Los Angeles. It's not the governor. It's not the board of supervisors. It's the local officials. And I know I'm drifting a little bit about your initial subject because Nick's chomping at the bit to say something. So I'll give it to you.
What if you don't mind asking, I'll keep it quick. Yeah, I'll be quick. What was your name? I didn't catch it, so I know I'm addressing. Hamid, I'm Nick. Nice to meet you, Hamid. And I'll say, where I differ from Greg is actually I do believe there's a concerted effort to replace white people in America. And I'll be honest, again, because I'm not beholden to any donors or any lobbies or anything like that. I'll come out and say it because if you look at what's going on in this country, for example, they just did the 2020 census. The portion of white people in this country declined to 57%. In 1965, at the passage of the Hart-Celler Act, that was at 90%. So there has been, whether you agree or not, the numbers show that due to mass migration, there has been a serious change in the demographics of this country. Now, there are many great Americans of all colors, creeds, and stripes, and I'm honored to be joined here, and many of you are providing me a forum here today, so I don't mean that with disrespect, but I do want to say that there is a large concern amongst, Americans whose families have been hundreds of years that we are being replaced in our own country and that there is migration that's not, really benefiting us, but rather helping the Democrats keep political power. And if you'd like to discuss that more in the aftermath, just because I don't want to keep anyone else, I encourage you to come up and ask me. And that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
So in fairness,
I do subscribe to that, though. Yes.
Thank you for this question. And as an immigrant, you should have known my answer. I believe strength and power of America is immigration. People from all over the world, the good brains, the hardworking people, the passionate people, being the part of the society and making this society successful. And I am for immigration, but I completely agree with Colonel Rath that immigration should be legal. Immigration system needs to be overhauled, but immigration is an essential part of this country. Some people immigrated 300 years ago, some 200 years ago, some 2 weeks ago. We should keep that process open and we should have our nice wedding. But I strongly believe that immigrants are an essential part for the strength what America has shown before and for the strength in years and decades and centuries to come. Thank you.
there is a lady in the back. And then you.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for being here, and thanks for OCIF for organizing this event. I have a question for you on a couple of issues. I would like you to address universal health care, where you stand on that, because when you go into the hospital and the bill is $300,000 if you don't have insurance, and it's $3,500 if you have insurance, we have a problem. The other thing I want you to address is freedom of choice. Considering the attack on women these days in this country, it's unconscionable. Where do you stand on freedom of choice? And third, I think we should be colorblind, Nick, because what do you think the Native Americans are thinking when you say what you're saying? This was their land when it was taken over by other people. So we need to respect all human beings, and we need to be colorblind. But I would like to hear from all of you regarding these three issues. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So thank you. The first thing I'd like to say regarding the issue of choice, I'm 100% opposed to abortion. I believe Roe v. Wade should be overturned, and I believe in the value of life. So I hope that answers your question there. The other thing, universal health care. Well, I don't know. I do believe that at some level there should be some kind of, I'd say, universal catastrophic care. There are a lot of people in this country who can't afford, surgery for a life-threatening disease. I think that's awful, and I think there should be something to be done to maybe form some kind of, bare minimum safety net at the bottom that, there's certain qualifiers like income and things of that nature, maybe to help them out. But a universal healthcare plan, no, I don't think that would work. I think our country's too vast, too large. And there's many people here who aren't paying into the system. And the third thing, because you're talking about color and things of that nature. Well, you're mentioning that, but I'm not going to look into your views, but I assume, when you say how'd the natives feel? Well, I don't know. Maybe you should ask them when they were, killing and fighting and enslaving each other. For example, when the Cherokee took land from the Choctaw, whose was it before? And who's in the wrong then? So if you want to talk about morality and things of that nature, I'm willing to do that, and I'm an open book, and, feel free to ask me questions afterward. But color, you want to say race doesn't matter, but there is conversations about race every day in this country, and it seems to be that white people are constantly maligned and attacked. And if you disagree with that, again, feel free to ask me afterward. But I'm always going to speak out against it. And just to give you a point of reference, when you have people in this country like Professor Derek Hook, that's his name, look this up, Professor Derek Hook at Duquesne University, one of the most expensive Catholic colleges in the country, he's saying it's ethical for white people to commit suicide. So maybe you should think about that. Thank you.
Hello.
Can I answer? Yeah, yes, all the candidates. I am a pro-life candidate. I believe the federal government should invest in adoption clinics, not abortion clinics. I believe if there's a murder and the woman's pregnant, it's a murder for two people, the woman and the baby. And the baby has its own DNA. It's not like the baby is a growth that needs to be cut out of a tumor. It's he or she has their own DNA, and 55% of all abortions are women. And I'm pro-women, and I'm just totally against abortion. I grew up as a Christian, and I believe that abortion's wrong. That's just my personal theory. And what was the other question? Oh, healthcare. We're very close to what you're talking about because we have Medicare for those 65 and over. We have Medicaid for those that are the underprivileged who cannot afford health care. We have free emergency room care for those that don't have the money to pay. And most companies and most organizations people work for have healthcare plans. Now, the doctor's a lot more versed on what's going on because he goes through it every day. And I'll let him say some more about that. But I'm not for universal health care. I think the healthcare companies will take advantage of that and milk us out of a lot of money. I'm for interstate health care across state lines. The way it is now, we're kind of sucked into just having the few companies here in California that we have to go to. So that's my stance on that. As far as white people, Nick's been around for 30 years. The doctor's been here how many years? He's been here 30 years. I've been on this land in America 68 years, and I'm a white man. And I've never seen it any better than it has been. We get along, at least in our communities, and I've been all around the world. I've been to 63 countries. I worked at the White House for 3 years. I traveled with the President of the United States. I've been to Europe. I've been to Asia. I've been to Australia. And this, by God, of the 63 countries, is the best country there is. And I say that because of our diversity. I mean, when the whites when 80% whites, the cars were junk, you know. And I mean, we're driving around these old Chryslers that didn't work. And then the Japanese came in with their technology. We start watching what they did, and we start bringing it in and bringing in the Japanese and their technology. Now we have some pretty nice cars called Lexuses and BMWs and things like that. So made in America is good, but we want to bring the knowledge around the world to America, like we have with Dr. Asif here, and bringing him into America. And we love everybody. And as a politician, I have no hidden agenda. I just want to serve. I've served my whole life, 30 years in the military, 8 years on council. And I just want to continue to serve and represent you in Washington.
Thank you. Just on a light note, I drive GMC, really does well. Honestly, better than Mercedes. I'm going to start with the healthcare because that is what is real passion for me, and that is what is taking me where I want to go. We have made some progress in healthcare, but we are not even close to. Affordable Care Act was a good positive step forward, but nothing is happening for a common person. Today, the most bankruptcies are happening because most people lose homes because of healthcare bills. If you end up in a hospital and spend about 10 to 15 days, literally, you are going to lose your lifelong savings. Many liens are put after that on people's house. We give them an insurance card, but we don't give them the guarantee to see a doctor and get things done. Literally, most of the plans, it takes huge effort to go and see a doctor. Many people who start seeing a doctor, and especially specialists, they start when they have some sign of stage 1 cancer. By the time they get diagnosed, cancer is gone to stage 3 or 4. I am not talking about rarities. I'm talking about everyday practice. People start having some heartburn and chest discomfort. By the time they see cardiologist, they have already having a heart attack. People start seeking for help because they might have a diabetes. By the time they start getting help, they already have end organ damage. We need to, in this, as Greg said very rightly, there is no better place on earth than America. And I tell you, I'm a little biased. There's no better place in America than California. And I would say one more thing. There is no better place in California than Orange County. And there is no better city than Mission Viejo. And credit goes to people like Greg Rath. But if we cannot take care of that, I'm talking about one issue. You go and get a medicine prescribed. Half of the times, your insurance plan will deny it. Your doctor doesn't know what he's giving because the clerk sitting is going to decide which medicine he needs to get. Your health plan would not cover 80% of your medications. And if you want to go buy, it'll be so expensive. Same medicine you can buy in Mission Viejo, if you have to pay from your pocket, might cost you $500. And you cross 30 miles in Mexico, same drug company, same drug can be bought in $30. It should not be happening here. That is the reason I'm not taking a penny from pharmaceutical industry, because you take money from them. And I am not here to talk anything about negative, but Congresswoman Young Kim just recently voted against capping insulin cost. Any of you who have diabetes, or any of you whose relatives have diabetes and need insulin, it is as important, as needed as air and water. And she's voting against capping insulin cost. If I was at her place, I'll say, if you cannot get it, just give them free, not even $35. We are really preventing people because she's getting tens of thousands of dollars from pharmaceutical industry. And they are making billions of dollars on those votes. We cannot have that kind of business going on. We need to make sure we take care of our people. A person gets in a stroke and leave the hospital. Not a doctor, not a rehab doctor decides how long he needs or she needs in a physical therapy. A clerk sitting in the IP or PPO office decides they need 3 treatments or 6 treatments. Our system needs to be overhauled. I can go on, and every single thing I'm talking, it is really an everyday problem. I have been helping people. There is not a week go by I have a fight and argument with IPA and PPO and health plans. And literally, I can help 500 or 1,000 people. I not really go and fight for people. But We need to change the policy. We need to send people over there who care about people, who knows the challenges and issues, who knows what is happening in emergency room and urgent care and office and hospital floor. What is the need for grandma and grandpa in the nursing home or assisted living? So we really need to work on healthcare system. Number choice. I'm the only candidate on this ballot is pro-choice. I believe, I believe it is woman's right to make a decision. No authority, no administration should make a decision for women. If she needs help, she can talk to her healthcare provider. And I am pro-choice, and I'm happily and proudly pro-choice candidate. And there was one third part.
Yes. Yeah. Hi. How you guys doing? Assalamu alaikum. Nick, this is and this will be a statement. So I don't even need like a feedback from you. Talking about immigration. Okay. I'm it's sad that you're a historian, right? And that means you don't know your history. Because if you know your history, you wouldn't like make that statement you made earlier on. Okay. I'm an immigrant and I got two kids. Okay. I got a son at 25 years old. He made a senior engineer, okay, for one of the best companies out here. And so when you open up a computer, he made that possible for you. Okay, I have a daughter who is in pre-med, and I would tell her, if a guy comes to your clinic or hospital, or he's going to undertake surgery, and if his name is Nick Towers, I would tell her, treat him, give him the best treatment. Okay, so all this white stuff, blue stuff, brown stuff, you need to change. And I could help you. We could meet after. I would help you and make you. I said I was going to make a statement. I didn't say I was going to make a question. Thank you very much. Okay, so now my request, no, let me down. My request is simple. And if any of you guys, the doctor, the pilot, and Nick, if you could do anything you could, even if you win or lose, make parking around the masjid on Fridays possible. Okay, there's so much restriction out there to park our vehicles. Okay, the sign could be changed and say parking on Fridays between 12 and 4. Because you have old people walking all the way down there. We can't find parking. Anyway, you guys could make that promise. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. And that's my my request.
May I say
Statement
something?
of the request.
May I say something? Well, no, here. Well, I'd like to say something though, because you made a statement addressing me, so I'm going to address you. So first off, not knowing my history, do you know who John Jay is? No, you address me. In America, we have the right to, respond. So do you know who John Jay is? Well, John Jay is one of the authors of the Federalist Papers. Can I finish? I let you address me. So thank you, sir. He's one of the authors of the Federalist Papers. And do you know what the Federalist Papers are? So you don't need to know. Okay. So you don't know what the Federalist Papers are. You don't know John Jay is. Well, he's a man who negotiated the treaty that ended the American Revolution, the war that brought us our freedom, that many white men fought in that war to gain our freedom, to create a country to allow you to come here and let your son, become an engineer and let your daughter open a medical practice or do what she's doing. So I just want to say real quick, he said in Federalist number 2 that he thanked the fact that our nation was united in faith, language, and culture. And one of the most important things, if you look at countries throughout the world, and I'm willing to say this, I disagree with Greg and Asif. I don't think diversity is a strength. I was talking to a gentleman earlier who's from Lebanon, and I didn't ask him on this, but what I think is interesting is that if you look at countries like Lebanon, there's a lot of diversity there. There's also a lot of political strife. If you look at countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina, a lot of diversity there, a lot of political strife. So if you answer a question, yes, I do know my history. And I do. And let me tell you this, the term nation of immigrants comes from John F. Kennedy in 1958. It's not something that defined us. We were actually historically founded as a nation of Anglo-Saxon ethnicity and Christian character. And you know what? I embrace everyone who's come to our shores since, but I'm not going to have us be maligned. And I'm not going to say I don't know my nation's history, sir. I know it very well. Thank you. I don't think you do.
Thank you.
So we won't have a debate here. Please. There was, hey, Nick,
So my question is, our country, as we're beginning to see, is rather full.
can I have,
Yes,
can
please.
I have, please? Let me read the one point that I said earlier. Treat everyone in the room with respect, even if you disagree with their viewpoint or ideas or positions. So I'm repeating that as a reminder, please, okay? Please, and let's give everybody a chance. I'm sorry.
No problem. Thank you. I was saying our country being very polarized. The extremes seems to be, and we seem to be, can't do anything in Congress, can't do anything in the Senate. Extremely polarized. So my question to you is, what is it that you would do, knowing the position of your party, that you would agree with the other party that you think we can bring people together? Can you think of a thing or two, by you being in Congress, what is the area or the topic of your areas of favorites? I mean, each one of you had 3 areas that were of concern. Which of those areas that you think there's compromise that we can bring this country together?
I'll start if you don't mind. Like I said in my opening statement, as a Marine, I went into battle. You know, I took everybody with me. I just didn't take my Republican Marines. But as a military man, we don't like war. We don't want to go to war. My wife sent me to war, and we sent our son to war. And my father fought in World War II. And the last thing we want to do is go to war. But we want a strong military to stop war. Strength is strength, peace through strength, as Ronald Reagan used to say. But to get back to your question, for me, I'm a big fiscal guy, fiscal hawk. And when our Nordstrom bills comes through, she knows we have to pay it, and we have to work to pay it. So when there's a bill that comes into Congress, instead of just printing money or borrowing money from the Chinese, we have to have the money in hand. So I will work with both sides of the aisle to ensure that we get the budget under control once and for all, because we're at a point now, it's $30 trillion. We don't even know what that means. I don't even know what a trillion means. It's just so high. And I think they're trying to push this inflation to reduce the value of the dollar, which will reduce the value of the deficit. And I don't think that's right. We have to do it the right way by getting the budget under control. And I will work with the Democrats, Independents, and Republicans to do that.
Yes, thank you. You know, I see patients every day. Somebody walk in, I have never asked him, you're Democrat, you're Republican, what is your religion? I take them in, talk about the problem, we get to the problem, and the best goal is to make them feel better. Honestly, I have had so many compliments from people who are as right as Nick, the good people. They appreciate your service. They like it. They want help. Same principle can go to Congress. We are there to take our challenges, our issues, our problems to solve them. I assure you, there's a vast majority of people on the other side of the aisle, in the Republican side, who are happy to negotiate, who are happy to compromise on things unless it's not their basic core values, and find a solution. I have done all my life. I've been on medical executive committees. I have been chief of staff of a hospital. I serve on the medical board of California. I serve all sort of people. I've never had a problem somebody telling me, okay, you are a Democrat or you are something else, we don't want to work with you. I'm going to take the same sense of inclusivity, same sense of tolerance and acceptance. When I came to this country, I landed in Kentucky. I have never held a basketball in my hand before. And 6 months later, I was in Wildcats game with my half face blue and half white. I was the first person of color probably who did this over there. I knew, and I'm in touch with those people from Kentucky, and really they're my best friends. I lived in a small town called Springfield, Kentucky. Had one traffic light. And when my daughter was born, for 14 days, our neighbors from here and there sending us food home, and they were asking, what is your eating restriction? People are really nice. I mean, you cannot find better people than Americans anywhere on planet Earth. After Kentucky, I went to Virginia. I live in Roanoke and I live in Charlottesville, the bestest people. And then I moved to New York and Boston, and finally came to California. I can tell you the reason I'm telling you all these things is I have lived in every corner of America, and there is not a better place, and they're not better people, more hospitable, warm, accepting, tolerant, giving, and really giving big. And so many have come up so many times to rescue me for many things. So same principle, literally the principle is same. If you take the common sense, you do not go into an argument, you just try to find things which are common amongst you, and you make sure other people know that you want to help people, you want to serve people. I have no other vested interest. I have a medical practice, I'm going to be taking a huge pay cut. I'll be doing much harder work than I'm doing right now. But this is, as I said in my first sentence, my parents taught me, helping others is our highest calling. And there are some policies which we need to correct, And you know what? Somehow, fortunately, there are several things which me and Grace actually agree on. And the most important thing is we want to help on that. So where there is a will, there is a way. Things can be done. Things can be done amicably. Things can be done constructively for the betterment of people. Thank you.
So when it comes to, talking about unity and bringing people together, I think the one thing that can unite everyone in this room, despite, the spirited disagreements we may have had today, is that the American citizen, the average person, is getting absolutely screwed over. That's what's going on in this country. And the only thing I see bipartisan support going on right now is we're sending $40 billion to Ukraine. Or, criminalizing, for example, BDS speech. That's another thing too. How is it that we can have freedom of speech in this country, but if you criticize the policies of a certain nation, you're not allowed to have a job with the US government? You ever think about that? So it's totally ridiculous. So I just wanted to, bring some of these things up. And I don't think we're at a point of bringing people together. I don't think we're at a point of unifying, because we do live in a totally polarized society, Mohanad. And thank you for your question. And, it's very unfortunate it is that way, but many of the things that contributed to this polarized society, such as mass migration, such as a, total unwillingness by the left to allow for Americans to live in peace. I think that's some of the things that have gone on. So I don't see how I can, personally, I don't think I could come together and shake hands with people in our Congress, people like Nancy Pelosi, who are in favor of drag queen story hour. Would you like drag queens to come read to your children? Because that's who we have on, that's who we're dealing with. People who want to murder babies, people who want to, destabilize the globe. That's who we're dealing with. So again, if it sounds a little harsh, that's the truth. So what I would do, again, to tell people to bring them together is say, hey, look, your tax dollars are being sent to foreign wars you don't agree with. You're being totally overwhelmed by cultures that perhaps aren't compatible with yours. It is time now to save what we have left of America. And it is time that we be bold. It is time we speak the truth. And it is enough with platitudes and enough with all of this dishonesty. Maybe perhaps some of you may not like what I have to say, and that's fine. You could say, oh, Nick Torres, that guy's an idiot. That's fine. That's your right with the First Amendment. But I have a right to say something. And I appreciate you guys allowing me here today. And that's kind of what I believe. So I hope it answered that. Thank you.
Mr. Torres, may I follow up with what you just said? 435 people in Congress.
Yes.
Let's just assume that 50% of them, well, it's an odd number, but 50% of them don't agree with you. And the other 50%, let's say 50% minus one, right?
Mm-hmm.
You will never be able to accomplish anything. How do you plan to work with the 50% who are in majority?
Well, first off, it's actually, and you were actually being very generous with me, Mahboob. It's probably far less than 50%. It's probably a handful of a couple congressmen, people like Paul Gosar, Marjorie Taylor Greene, people I have a lot of respect for. That's who I'd work with. The same thing was said to the left 50, 60 years ago when they started their proverbial march through the institutions. Well, the things I'm saying here today, like an immigration moratorium, like more realism on our foreign policy, those are things that J.D. Vance, who's the Senate candidate in Ohio, is saying. So, yes, you're absolutely right, Mahboob. From a legislative perspective, there's a lot of, I have to go uphill, certainly, and I've experienced that in this race. But principles matter. You know, and I'll say this, I think you and the Islamic community can agree with that. You know, principles matter. You guys hold your faith very dearly. You hold your values very dearly. I'm not trying to say that in an attempt to pander. I'm just saying that that's what it is. So I respect that. And I think you can understand my firmness in my own belief and the courage of my own convictions. And that's what I believe. Because politics isn't about winning elections and just scamming you for money and being on the influence and grifting circuit. It's about being your champion, listening to your concerns, and fighting for you. Thank you.
So we have a question right here.
I have a question for Nick. Yeah, I have a question for Nick. Nick, my question is, with your views, and that's your views, I respect that, how you'll be representing all of us that are from different background. Most of us have migrated to this country. Most of us are highly educated professionals and everything, contributing more than an average person, I would say. So when you are in Congress, you'll be working against us, for a lack of better word. So how we can, in the right mind, support your candidacy? Can you please help me change my mind?
No, of course. Well, you know. And what was your name, if you don't mind me asking?
Sadek.
Sadek. Nice to meet you, Sadek.
Pleasure.
First off, you know, my policy prescriptions, I understand, I respect the fact that many of you are from different parts of the world. I mean, if you don't mind me asking, where are you from originally? From Pakistan. Are you from Karachi or Islamabad? Okay, very cool. Well, you know, I respect your culture. I respect people's backgrounds, but also we in America have a culture here too. You know what I mean? And again, I recognize and recommend that many people have come from our shores from all over the world, but there was a certain founding culture that made you want to come to this country, right? I mean, the values that were implemented here, freedom of speech, you know, free markets, these things that we all tout, well, where did those come from? They came from Anglo-Saxon traditions and Anglo-Saxon values. So, you know, fundamentally, when you say things like, well, how are you going to represent us? I hear what you're saying, but how I'm going to represent you when it comes to a variety of issues is where the overlap I mentioned earlier, which, like I said, when it comes to issues like national security, you know, perhaps as someone who's Muslim, again, I'm just assuming because you're here. So if you're not, I apologize. But someone who's Muslim, I think you could appreciate my stance on foreign policy that calls for a more even-handed approach in the region, or on social conservatism, where we actually, you know, affirm social conservative values. That's where I'd say I'd represent you. But, you know, on issues regarding immigration and things of that nature, I understand. And one last thing I want to say to you, one thing you said at the end, you know, immigrants who are contributing more than Native Americans. And, you know, I'm sure many of you are very accomplished people. That's great. But, you know, American citizens are already here, you know what I mean? And there's kind of a birthright in this country to this country. So I respect the fact that you came here and that you've contributed and assimilated so well, Sadegh. But that's, you know, you don't need to knock. I wouldn't say you're not knocking, but you don't need to belittle other Americans who perhaps aren't as successful as you, I would say, you know, and it's a testament to your own family and your own personal individual accomplishments that you are where you are. So that's what I'd like to say. If that answered your question.
Can I just say, when our country was formed, as Nick was saying, we had a lot of problems. It wasn't good. I mean, the founding fathers put together some great documents, but we had slaves in the South doing slave labor. We had the whites pushing the Indians west and basically onto reservations. And we've learned through the last 250 years to assimilate and get along with more and more people. My wife and I are best friends with these immigrants from Iran. She runs a preschool out of her house. She came here working hard. She learned the language. Her husband's an architect, and her two children are outstanding students in high school. So we've come a long way. And as far as a polarization question, I think the media, TV media and social media, is making it a lot worse than it is. If you walk around your neighborhood, if you're Muslim, Catholic, Christian, Jew, we get along in our neighborhood. I mean, this is Orange County. Yes, we're very diverse, but it's not as bad as the media is pushing it. So if you turn off the TV and turn off social media, we all get along really, really well. And like I said, I've been on this earth 68 years, and I'm not racist at all. And there's these fringe on the left and there's fringe on the right that try to make it like we're this big polarized country. But trust me, I think our country is doing as well as it can. We have a lot to keep working on, which we'll continue to do. to get us a better country, but putting a 25-year moratorium on immigration is not the way to do it. So thank you.
Just want to add just a little bit more on that. Since I am myself an immigrant, I'm not like a son of a daughter of an immigrant. I respect your opinion on things. It's not that immigrants who are successful and they're bragging on US citizens, okay, they are successful doing something. We bring strength. We provide almost 40% of United States rural areas are served by immigrant doctors. If immigrant doctor would not be there, they would not have an access to a healthcare provider for 50 to 100 miles radius. I'm saying this because I have witnessed myself. I've lived in all those areas and all those in South and Midwest and all over. So they are bringing strength to enhance. If somebody come and do a better business, that is not he's bringing better business just for him and his children. He's paying tax. He's helping more people to get job. He's creating more prosperity. So I strongly believe that, Nick, what your ideas are, they are not very popular. Even in Anglo-American people, which I have experienced every single day, they are really, really in a different thought process. And I'm not saying anything that you're doing something wrong or whatever, that's what you might be thinking. But majority of people, which I have been giving examples before, very tolerant, very accepting, very helpful, and they believe that we are here to help them. And honestly, the one reason I called America home was First Amendment, freedom of speech. People who are living in different countries, like you mentioned about Lebanon and Bosnia, there is not really much diversity. They're similar kind of people. Those countries are not strengthening. Pakistan or India, there's not really much diversity. Some people are speaking different languages, but America is a diverse country where people come from completely different language, different religion, different race, different ethnicity, different eating habits, and bring on, and still they learn English to become citizen. Still, they have to pay taxes. Still, they have to act as an American and be part of the society. And anybody who does not follow those principles, I am not for them and I will never vote for them. Anybody who comes, they need to follow American values. And honestly, American values are truly human values. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have quite a few questions. If you would keep your answers short as well.
I've been to Karachi, by the way, and I know why you're in America, because you love it here.
Firstly, I thank all three of you for being here. So I have a specific question for you, Mr. Torres. Again, immigration has been the hot topic today, and you mentioned you're completely against it. In the beginning, in your when your initial 2-minute speech, you mentioned crime rates. So originally, I grew up in Texas, and Texas is known for its problems at the border. But according to the Texas Department of Public Safety, this was in 2018, so maybe outdated, but it is the most recent statistic I could find. In terms of criminal conviction, illegal immigrants, their criminal conviction rates was 782 out of 100,000. Legal immigrants was 535 out of 100,000. And native-born Americans was 1,422 out of 100,000, which is more than legal immigrants and almost twice as much as illegal immigrants. So I was curious if you can go into more specific details about why you are against general immigration, because I've only heard, I'm against it, and not specific reasons why.
No problem. And what was your name, you don't mind me asking?
I'm Yassine.
Yassine, nice to meet you. So I have the 3 C's of immigration as to why I'm against it. And I'll get back to the crime thing specifically, but this is kind of like the boilerplate spiel. So first thing, when it comes to immigration, first, continuity. We have had total open borders in this country since 1965 with the passage of Hart-Celler Act, which brought from 1965 to 2015, 59 million legal immigrants, which is the city of Houston, Texas, every year to our population. That's not including illegal immigrants. So imagine the effect that has on housing, wages, things of that nature. The second thing is contiguity. We share a 2,000-mile border with a third world country, Mexico, which is essentially an open portal into our country. So that's the second reason. And the third reason, continuity, and cost. The third reason is cost. You know, when you look at these things, and we'll get to crime in a second, but, you know, for example, there was a study done by the Center of Immigration Studies by a guy named Stephen Camarota, and I could provide you with the study. 51% of all households headed by an immigrant collect some form of welfare. That's totally unacceptable. So there's that. And when it comes to safety, you know, illegal immigrants, first off, they shouldn't even be in the country in the first place. You know, so that's not good. They're committing crime. Doesn't matter if it's lower than the American. We already have criminals in our country. We know that. We don't need to import any further. So, you know, when it comes to, you know, legal immigrants or illegal immigrants potentially committing lower, you know, crime rates, I don't know if I necessarily believe that. I could look up some other information, and I respect what you're hearing, and I'll kind of look into it. But nonetheless, we don't need to be importing more criminals. And I think there's other things that kind of contradict what you said, but I don't have them readily available, so I'll take what you said. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess I want to talk about being Muslim, obviously, being Black, obviously, and an immigrant. You know, amazing topics everybody's talking about, but, you know, specifically to, you know, we're talking about, yes, Nick, please. We're talking about, you know, immigration, and that's awesome. I immigrated here, and yes, it should be legal, whatever that means. But I'm not concerned. Right now, I'm just talking about, I'm wondering if there's another white person that's going to walk in here and shoot up the place, like it happened in Buffalo. And nobody's talking about that. So I'm not worried about that. You know, I'm worried about what are you doing to create safety. And you're talking about white people and, you know, can you talk about that? Can you explain what's your plan? Do you believe, you know, white supremacy is a thing? And what are you doing to combat white supremacy if you do believe it's a problem, like you're doing with immigration? And I guess the second point is, I don't know exactly if you're representing the Republican Party or you're representing Trump and the Republican Party, but I mean, just looking at the hat, it's obviously a representation for everybody here. It's this guy who, you know, put a ban on 7 countries, and none of them were the 9/11 from, you know, that caused the 9/11 attack. So can you explain that to us? Like, what's your statement? Are you full on Trump? Or are you full on Republican?
I got the question. Somebody submitted a question similar to this, so I'll combine the 2 questions, okay? The question here is the Second Amendment guarantees right to possess a firearm, right? This is the law of the land. How would you curb gun violence plaguing the country? Let's combine this with the gentleman's question.
Yeah. Yeah. So
What he's talking about, it's gun violence, right? He's talking about what happened last week.
Because he's a Black man, people come in and start shooting up the place. Or white people coming in.
okay, so can I answer that?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, please. Okay. And if you don't mind my asking, what's your name? Muhammad. Nice to meet you. I'm Nick. Of course. Yeah, no worries. Of course. Thank you. So yeah, Muhammad, first off, in regards to, you know, the mass shooting that occurred in Buffalo, that's unfortunate. I don't share the ideology of the person that did it. He's pretty fringe, I'd say. But, you know, if you look at the evidence of mass shootings in this country, most mass shootings actually occur within our inner cities. And if you look at the FBI's definition of a mass shooting, it's any shooting where there are 4 people that are struck. So there are actually mass shootings that occur all across this nation, and St. Louis, Chicago, and various places like that. So that, I hope that answers your question there. But in regards to, you know, white people coming up and shooting up the room, I personally don't believe there's this specter of white supremacy haunting the country. 2 years ago, we had the George Floyd riots, which actually witnessed many white police officers, you know, literally scrubbing the feet of Black activists. It witnessed total anarchy and mayhem in our streets. Cities were burned down. And if we were a white supremacist nation, I don't think, you know, you would have seen statues being torn down or other things happening. So I disagree with that fundamentally. You know, I think that's kind of a slur on our nation. I don't think white people in this country are actively looking over to rule or impose their will over people of color. That's just my opinion. Yeah, but yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I'm going to say, I'll say no. I think it's a fantasy made up by the left. I'd say that there's greater issues in the country, for example, like just me, yeah, as a black man, I understand, but I think black on black crime is a very big issue. No, but I'm just saying, well, hold on. You're asking about white right-wing extremism, white supremacy. I mean, I think these are important questions. Go ahead. So I answered your question. I don't believe in white supremacy. I don't think it's real. Thank you.
So let's go to this one. The Second Amendment, and how would you curb gun violence like in the country? As succinct as possible.
In the United States, we have a Second Amendment. We have the right to bear arms, and it should not be infringed. That's in our Constitution. We want to change that. You got to change the Constitution. We have a right to bear arms. Number one, my father-in-law had a lot of weapons in his house, not to go around shooting people, but to protect himself. He was afraid the Russians were going to invade, right? Your father thought the Russians were going to invade, but he was a big deer hunter too. He loved to shoot deer. So, and you always hear guns don't kill people, people kill people. So it's a person behind the gun. And there's a lot of people who should not have guns because of their mental states or other issues. And that's why we do the background checks. And I know the NRA is against background checks and everything else, but I have no problem with that. But we do have a right to bear arms in the United States of America. That's what makes us different. And in World War II, the Japanese never attacked the homeland. And we learned after the war why, because they were so afraid everybody had a gun. So that's my thought. But we need to curb violence, and I'll work with other members of Congress to come up with a plan, a reasonable plan that's within the Constitution to ensure that we can stop a lot of these mass shootings. But like today, we have a couple police officers here just kind of keeping an eye on things. And things like that make it more safe. So thank you both for being here.
Yes, I totally respect Second Amendment, but we need to be cautious. I think I have worked in the emergency room, and I have seen the effects of bullets on people. I've seen people dying myself. Background check, Greg mentioned, is very important, should be a little bit more stingy. Safety pins and safety measures, a lot of accidents happen. We should not have any problem on that. And we should respect Second Amendment. Ghost guns, we need to control more than what we are doing, not doing a good job. But as far as the Second Amendment, I respect Second Amendment.
Yeah, so I believe in the Second Amendment. The people's right to bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what I believe. So I don't think we need to add any more unnecessary layers of quote unquote safety or background checks or anything like that. And when it comes to gun violence, again, everyone's talking about legislation, all these, potential solutions. Well, who's shooting the guns? Where's the gun violence occurring? It's occurring in our inner cities. It's occurring due to, I feel like, the police who've been scared to police their own neighborhoods. So, what I would do if I was in Congress is I would try to, come up with some kind of legislation. I'm not particularly sure right now at the moment, but to, again, allow our police to patrol the streets and do their jobs again, rather than being worried about, left-wing mobs coming after them for their job or suing them because they're enforcing the law. That's the biggest problem with gun violence. We are a nation that is totally lawless. It's a state of anarchy in our cities, and we need to do something to address it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for OCIF for arranging this and you guys giving us the opportunity. My name is Salam, that translates to peace, and I stand for peace. So my question is related to peace. More than 70 years, the situation in Palestine and Israel not getting better, getting worse. And a lot of us in the community believe that there is a big bias, and a lot of people believe it's apartheid regime and double standard. My question to you is, what kind of bill that you may introduce or you may support? Everybody talks about in general, we'll create peace, two states. I really would appreciate a very direct and specific solution for that. Thank you.
So yes, that's a great question. And I think you might be shocked. I'm a Republican, and I think a lot of people know that the Republican Party is pretty beholden to certain foreign lobbies in this country. And if I could say what I feel about the state of the situation in Israel and Palestine, first off, I do believe in a two-state solution. I think Israel should stop building settlements, and I think there should be some level of dialogue with the Palestinian people so that they too can live in dignity and they too can have a country where they can, live in peace and pride. I do believe that. I really do. Now, let me say this also. Because this is, and maybe I'm committing political suicide more than I already have throughout this campaign, but I like to speak honestly with people. I believe we have to seriously reassess our foreign policy and our relations with various countries throughout the world. And one of them would be Israel. I'm willing to say that I support America first. I'm more concerned with the well-being and the people of this room than in Mission Viejo and Tustin, rather than what's going on, in Tel Aviv or somewhere else in Israel. That's truly what I believe, and I'm a Republican saying that. That's what America first believes. Not a lot of the candidates would say that, but I will say that. And I do think, thank you. And I think it's awful what happened with the recent death of the journalist Abu Shireen Akleh. That's awful too. And we need to have truth and honesty about what's going on in that part of the world. My family is from the Levant. They're Lebanese. They came a long time ago. I don't speak Arabic, so I'm not, again, going to pretend like I know much about the culture, but I do believe there should be a more even-handed approach in American foreign policy. And, many people in the Democrat Party, I don't think OCIF's that way, but many people in the Democrat Party are also a part of this uniparty effort with many people in the Republican Party, including Greg, who has on his foreign policy section, a whole 2 pages on Israel and how he wants to help them. So I think it's important to discuss these issues. And, again, if that's going to bring me flack, I think that's totally acceptable. But specific things, repeal the Magnitsky Act. Why is the United States sanctioning foreign leaders in countries that have nothing to do with us? That's one of the things. There's people all across the world and various organizations that are trying to help different causes that are affected by the Magnitsky Act. And I'd also try to pass some kind of legislation too, where total freedom of speech in this country is respected. Like I mentioned earlier, it's totally unacceptable that if you are a member of the BDS movement, which I don't claim to support or have any connections to, but I'm just saying that I support people and their right to total free speech, the right to criticize any country they please. And if they, aren't allowed to get a government position or may lose their job, that goes against the fundamental spirit of the First Amendment in this country. So those are the 2 things I would do. Thank you.
As I said earlier, I worked at the White House for 3 years. I was the chief of staff of the White House military office in the late 90s, the second term of President Clinton. And if we ever got to peace, that was the time to do it. I went to 3 peace negotiations at the time. I met with Yasser Arafat, who ran the PLO. I met with Benjamin Netanyahu. I've been to Israel. I've been to Gaza. And my God, this is a tough one. It's all over land. We couldn't even get Arafat to meet with Netanyahu because he wouldn't go to Israel territory. We couldn't get Netanyahu to go to Palestinian territory. We ended up with a tent in the middle of the desert, and that's the way we got. So it's just so hard, and it's all over land. And I think in the end of the Trump administration, we're getting very close, and then that stopped obviously when the president left. So it's a tough one. I don't have the answer. And I took a class after I retired from the military. I got another degree in history and political science from Cal State Fullerton. And one whole class was how to find peace in the Middle East, in Israel, and we couldn't come up with an answer. So I will work with the leaders of both the Israeli, and they're strong. That's the problem that you just mentioned. Is Israeli PAC in Washington, they got money, and they control a lot of these politicians. And the other side, the Palestinians, they don't have the clout. So the money goes, these politicians go where the money is, unfortunately. And again, like I said, next year I'll be 70 years old. I'm not going to Washington and get paid off by anybody. At my age, I'm not looking to go there for 30 years. I want to find solutions. And one of my mottos is politics, or solutions, not politics. So I'll find a solution. I'll work on a solution in my lifetime. If we can do it, I'd be impressed.
Thank you. So finally, after an hour and a half, me and Nick agree. Yes, I do believe Palestinians' rights. I do believe two-state solution. And I do believe that this is a really emergent situation. I do feel for Palestinians, kids who are really every day living in despair and destruction. It happens both ways, and we need to play a role where when we talk about, I mean, my whole life passion is if you ask me one thing which I have the passion for, that is human rights. And I do work globally, not just in America, globally about human rights. And we cannot close our eyes. Israel is our ally, and we live up there, but we cannot close our eyes for those Palestinian kids, young boys and young girls, who could be really another great scientist, a doctor, an inventor, or something, but they are just losing their life living in those slums. This is a day and night difference, just 5 miles apart between Gaza and Israeli territory. So we really need to find some right solution. We need to find a way to help, not score points, to help those suffering for almost 70 years and living in their land and living in their land like slaves. And we need to push hard enough when we need to be somewhat impartial. If we'll be partial, it will be harder to seek peace. So if I'm in the Congress, as he said, I won't be in any vested interest. I will work truly as a humanitarian. And that focus will be obviously my focus too, because there's a big human rights violation. Settlements should stop, and there should be some negotiating table, and both sides have to give and take something and come to some solution for the sake of those million plus people there. Thank you.
So we're coming close to our we have two more questions, right? One after you. So we have three more questions to go.
Okay. All right. Hello, my name is Ziad, and I am been here in Orange County for 32 years, originally Lebanese. So I'm going to make a little statement regarding oil, and then the question will follow. The statement, I am a bit of a well-read person on oil. So the United States, like a couple of years ago, was producing almost 13 million barrels a day. Of course, when the price declined, that 13 million barrels became 10 million barrels because it wasn't as profitable. We still have the ability to produce 13 million barrels. We consume about 10 million barrels a day, which means we do not need to import oil from anybody. Now, the reason that the price is staying high is mainly because the United States does not have any tariffs or any ban on exports. So somebody in China who needs a ship of oil can buy it from Chevron over here because we have a freedom of exports. We have a freedom of, companies and trade. So if you win as candidates, would you support a limit on exports of the United States, or maybe put a tariff to discourage exports of oil out of the United States into foreign territory? That is my question for the candidates.
No, I believe in free and fair trade. I would not put a limit on exports or a tariff. I believe when this current president came in and he stopped the XL pipeline and he was trying to use the progressive role of trying to go into alternative forms of energy, windmills and solar and wind and things like that, that the oil producers say, wait a minute, we're not going to invest millions of dollars into this new field because this guy's not going to let us drill once we find the oil. So I think it goes to the very top of the country, the administration, that they believe that the oil producers are just kind of holding back right now. Don't get me wrong, they're happy the prices are where they are. They're making huge amount of money for the amount of oil they're drilling. But I believe the American people will not put up with $6, $7, $8 a gallon. I mean, I'm still befuddled when I go down the I-5. It's packed. You can't get off the freeways because, and I'm like, these people are all paying $6. So that's telling me that half of that money from 2-3 months ago is they're not spending it on other things in the economy. But I believe the leaders of the country, going to the very president, must encourage oil and gas production and nuclear production, because only 54% of all oil drilled and manufactured and refined goes for cars and trucks and automobiles. The other 46% goes into production. It goes to companies that are producing things and makeup and other oil-based products. So to answer your question, I know it's a long answer, no, but I would encourage oil drilling and gas drilling until we can come up with some better form of energy. But let me just say this. I got here in 1977. The sky was full of smog. You couldn't breathe hardly during the day. You could get your breath. This is the cleanest air I've seen. You know, we got rid of the lead in gasoline. We got catalytic converters to take out a lot of the bad pollutants. This is the best we've seen, and the cars are very fuel efficient. I mean, we used to get 6-7 miles per gallon. Now we're getting 30-40 miles per gallon. So it's better than it used to be, but we have to keep our country drilling oil until we come up with some form of alternate energy.
Thank you for this question. I do believe in free trade, but when those big companies start gouging prices and they start attacking and robbing people, then it's a little too much. That's why I'm not taking money from pharmaceutical industry because my patients are suffering. That's why I'm not taking money from oil companies because they are making huge profits on our state. I agree with Greg that we need to have an alternate energy. This city, I don't know about Orange County, but LA, 20 years ago, you could hardly see anything after 4 or 5 feet above. Sometimes they had to really delay the flights to land because they couldn't see anything. The not only effect of that pollution on visibility and everything, I see firsthand being a lung doctor, effect of pollution and all that stuff on people's body. The number of asthma and COPD cases skyrocketing. So we need to work on alternate energy part, and we need to rein in all these big oil industry companies that they should not gouge prices. They are making record profits when people are suffering. And it is concerning for oil price to be $6 a gallon, and we don't know where it's going to end. This is really affecting people. We'll do everything possible to control that. Thank you.
Great questions, Ziad. All right, thank you. So real quick on that. First, I believe it's drill, baby, drill. We got to frack. We got to do whatever we can to, ensure that America's oil supply is met and we can keep up production. And when it comes to tariffs, I wouldn't just favor, and I hope I'm answering your question, so please tell me if I'm not. When it comes to tariffs, though, I'm not a free trader. I'm an American nationalist. I believe in protecting and bolstering American industries. And it's not just with oil or countries that are foreign to us, with us exporting oil or things like that, or importing oil too. I would say that tariffs with products from a variety of countries that are cheaply made, like China most notably. I'm the only candidate in the race. If you go check my Patriot platform, I've called for a 25% on tariff on all products that come from China, because free trade, quite frankly, has done a lot of damage to this country. And it's not fair if you have workers and companies competing with people in situations that aren't analogous economically, which makes it more advantageous for these companies to flee overseas, bring their businesses there, and take away from America. So I'm not a free trader. I would support tariffs, and I would support any measure that would allow America to be fully energy independent and make sure that we have gas prices that allow us to drive to work and people to run their businesses and do things like that. So again, I am for tariffs, not just on energy, on a variety of products. I'm not a free trader, and I would do everything I can to ensure American energy independence. I hope that answers your question.
Hello. I've never done this before, but I'm gonna keep this short. Right now, as we speak, I think the biggest enemy in this country for everyone, regardless of your race, religion, or ethnicity, are interest groups. These powerful lobbyist groups that are channeling billions of dollars. And the worst part about all of this is that they're the ones who have not only the final say, they have the most say in the politics of our country. As someone who was born and raised over here of immigrant parents, I've always been more concerned about the domestic policies of the United States and the foreign policies as well. Not that foreign policies are not important. Can you get to a question, please? Okay. So my question to the candidates is, what will you do to reel in or reduce the power of interest groups so that common everyday Americans have a greater say in the domestic affairs of this country?
I do support election finance reforms. I'm not taking money from any interest group. I probably am the only candidate. I'm not taking from any big corporation PACs and any interest group, because my only agenda and my only mission is to go and represent people of District 40. Take their challenges, take their issues, take their problems to Washington, D.C., and find the right solution for them. And I will encourage any regulation coming up or any amendment coming up to reining in on those interest groups. That is a big problem. They are very strong to rein them in for the people's rights and people's well-being.
And I agree. I've been to Washington. I've been to the back rooms where I see the money's flowing back and forth. Fortunately, for a congressional candidate, the max amount of money we can take from an individual is $2,900. And it has to come from a personal account. It can't come from a business account. The most we can take from a political action committee that represents a pharmaceutical or oil company is $5,000. That's the most we can take. But like Asif, I have not taken money in this campaign. All my money has come from local donors. The average is about $75 per person. I've raised about $60,000 in this campaign. I put in $100,000 of my own money. So what I'm saying is, I will not be bought. I will not be paid for by any special interest. But yes, it's a major, major problem in Washington, because they want to get a bill through. They'll go around and all the money starts coming across the table to all the different congressmen and women to get their vote. And it is a problem. And I will do what I can on my part, you know, as a senior statesman in Washington, to ensure that we don't get paid off to pass bills that are not for the good of the country.
Yeah, that was a great question. I think, especially when you look at the influence of lobbies, like we were just discussing earlier on foreign policy, you know, Greg brought it up and I'll bring it up here too. You know, you look at the influence of like APAC, the American Israeli Political Action Committee, or with a variety of these pharmaceutical committees that have been, you know, pushing forth, you know, vaccine authorization, things of that nature. This is a huge issue. So what I've done is I've endeavored not to take any donations from any foreign lobbies, any corporate PACs or anything like that. And granted, you know, it's certainly hamstrung my fundraising efforts. I could tell you running a grassroots campaign based on the values of America first. It isn't easy, you know, and I've had to rely on a lot of small donors and a lot of people who live here in CA40, but I would rather do that than be beholden to the same interests that have been driving our country into the ground. So to give you an answer, you know, I'm not, I don't have a exact legislation or something to do to address with lobbyists, but I can tell you that if Nick Torres is elected and I have the honor of representing you in CA40, I can assure you that the interests of the people here in this room will take precedent over that of any lobbyist. Thank you.
Last but not the least, Mr. Yasser Barakat. Short, please.
I hate to tell you this. I think you guys need to brush up on your knowledge about the oil production in America and see how much of that oil produced in America, sold in America versus being exported. I think your statement, most of you are wrong. But that's the statement. Here's the question. It's really follow-up on Salam question. Nick, I'm very impressed that your background was from the living country. That's mean. Yes, but yet you have really your view about the immigrant, and you are the result of immigrant. So the question is about follow-up on Salam. What would you do in order to create the peace in the Middle East? And one of the things need to be done to stop giving the Israeli government billions of dollars in financial aid. I know most of you says, oh, the security of Israel, but no one talk about the security of the Palestinians and the Middle East. On one hand, the US government give about publicly $3, $5, $7 billion, but I worked in Israel, by the way, as a Syrian, and you go there, Israeli company has a benefit. American company has the benefit to open an office in Israel, and they have a tax-free and financial aid. So the hidden financial aid given to the Israeli government are in the billions and billions, probably exceeded 10 to 20 billion dollars per year. So will you be strong enough to go publicly and demand from the government, US government, to stop giving billions of dollars to the Israeli government while they are killing Palestinian innocent children? And the Israeli government considered one of the #1 country who spies on America. #1 country who spies on America. So what would you do? How strong will you be to make those statements and make it public?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump again. Yeah, I will. And what was your name? You don't mind my saying again? Yeah, sir. Okay. Well, on the immigrant question, we've already heard that, but I'd love to discuss my opinions on that afterward if you'd like. But regards to Israel and foreign aid, again, go check out my website, voteNickCA40.com. I'm the only candidate in the race that's actually called for an end to foreign aid to all countries, which would include Israel. And perhaps maybe some of you don't agree with that, but that does cover that issue. I don't think we should be sending aid to Israel for a variety of reasons. One, Israel, on a GDP per capita basis, is wealthier than Great Britain. Do we send any aid to Great Britain or anything like that? No. So why should we be sending it to a country that's wealthy, has a thriving military and tech sector? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And also, it does create an issue, I think, when we are trying to build relationships in the Middle East and, solve things. For example, if you want to talk about war and the various wars in the Middle East, for example, like in Iraq, one of the biggest drivers for the war in Iraq was the Project for the New American Century, which was basically a think tank comprised of Zionist intellectuals who wrote letters and convinced George Bush to go to war. So this is a huge issue. I think what we could do ultimately, like I said, is pass some legislation which ends foreign aid to all countries, carte blanche end. And I know some people may not like that and some people may be left in the cold, but I think that's the best solution. We need to keep our money here. And ultimately, like you said, when it comes to the issue of spying, and I'll just leave on this, people like Jonathan Pollard, I'm sure you're aware of this. Or what about, have any of you heard of the Apollo affair? Okay, exactly, the Apollo affair. Well, one of the things that we are most concerned with as a nation is the proliferation of nuclear weapons, are we not? I mean, we are one of the signatories of the Tehran Treaty, which is, I believe, the non-proliferation treaty, or the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, sorry, not the Tehran Treaty, nuclear non-proliferation treaty, which designates and tries to prevent the spread of nuclear arms across the world. Israel is not a signatory of that. And also they received their nuclear arms program, like I mentioned with the Apollo affair, look it up, in Pennsylvania, where you had Mossad agents who went into Apollo, Pennsylvania, and stole uranium, stole technology to go ahead and build an Israeli nuclear program. That happened at our country, and they spy on us, and these things go on. So it's not to bash on the nation of Israel. I do think Israel has a right to exist like every other country. It's kind of the facts on the ground. I think should be a two-state solution though, but ultimately, I think we should be more, kind of even-handed in our approach overseas. And that also, I would not extend that just to Israel and Palestine. I would say that in regards to Russia and Ukraine too. Why are we sending $40 billion to Ukraine, a government which is employing openly neo-Nazi militias in their attempts to ethnically cleanse Russians from the Far East? This is what you're not hearing. And again, perhaps I'm not popular. I'm not, on the influence circuit. I'm not getting in thousands of dollars of donations. But what I have is the courage of my convictions. I have a knowledge, and I'm willing to speak and say what I believe in front of anyone, no matter what. And I hope some of you will appreciate that today. We've butted some heads, but like I said, I'm willing to speak and stand, and no matter what the audience is. And I look forward to hopefully having the honor of representing you. And that's what I believe on that issue. Thank you, sir.
I too believe, and again, I was involved with 3 peace process. One in Israel, one in Washington, one at Camp David. And I believe in the two-state solution. The Jewish community is very well organized in the United States, and they control a lot of politicians. That's why the foreign aid is so large going to Israel. I like Nick, I'm not for a total ban of all foreign aid, but I think we need to rein in foreign aid and take care of our own country first. I am not at odds with either the Jewish community or Palestinian community. I'm for peace. And if we help one country, we should help the other, because each country needs to protect himself. So let's get the two-state solution solved first, and then we'll go. But I am not in favor with the millions and billions of dollars or the billions of dollars you're talking about going to Israel. But I am in favor with peace over there. We came very close to peace. I got to watch it at firsthand, and it was an amazing process. Arafat was not willing to bend. He was the problem at the time. This was in the late 90s. It wasn't Netanyahu. It was Arafat. We were giving him everything he wanted, but he wasn't willing to bend because he's a military leader. If he finds peace, he's out of a job. But he's gone. Netanyahu's gone. Let's work on a new solution right now, and I will continue to work. The Jewish community has never given me one dime, so I'm not beholden to them at all.
Thank you. I have already expressed my feelings about that. What I would do is I'm a problem solver. I am a diplomat. What I would push more, which is more doable, is proportionately increase the aid for Israeli Palestinians. Make sure that every Palestinian get the clean water and clean air and can go to school, can have a job, and there is more dollars spent on Palestine. And I will go and strongly lobby that we should get the due support they need. We will be fighting to get some other support from, take some money off from that. No, we should be concentrating on Palestinian rights. We should be getting them whatever they need. And I think I will be in a strong voice for that because I believe in human rights and I believe Palestinians are really, really suffering. And we should do everything possible to get them out of this disaster.
We've come to an end. But I do have a challenging question for you. I have a challenging question for you. So far you haven't met the challenge. But I'm going to give you this challenge. I had to reframe this question that the person asked. So it is very common to hear from, especially from politicians, whether you're making speeches, say, I'll fight for your rights. Right? This is what you hear from every candidate. I'm a fighter, right? Okay. But in a polarized environment of today, it feels like maybe we should eliminate the word fight so that there is more civility in the conversation, right? So can you think, here's a challenging question. Can you think of just one word to replace the word fight?
Well, I've been a leader my whole life. I've lived a military fighter squadron, a fighter squadron.
One word. Yes.
Mutual.
Thank you. Mr. Torres.
I don't have a word.
How about you?
Healthy dialogue.
2 words.
I
was going to use 2, mutual respect, but you only gave me 1.
Fight. No. But you know, you see what I think.
Mutual respect.
The point comes through is that that's really what we need. That's really what we need. Okay. Thank you so much. This was very dynamic. This was very, very good. Thank you so much for your time, and every single one of you. Thank you so much for sharing your ideas and your thoughts. Okay. I want to get to know you. It doesn't matter if you're in Congress. You won't have time for me, but I'll come after you.
I'm at work. It's my number. It's on there. Give it to your friend.